Apologies for the darkness behind me. I finished this review pretty late, but I did have a question, a quandary, if you will. Do you think while Lois is out there trying to get information about Mannheim, do you think anybody ever just looked at her, paused, and said, "We don't talk about Bruno, no. What's up, guys? Mason the Brock Anderson here, and this is Superman and Lois Season 3, Episode 4, Too Close to Home. So this one was good, but very rushed feeling, and I think a lot of that is just down to there are a lot of stories they're trying to get through in this one episode. And so there were several moments where it felt like that came through in the scenes, whether it was the quick cuts, whether it was the fast talking to try to rush through the dialogue of the scene. It just felt like they were not really able to take a breath in a lot of these moments, and sometimes that worked to its advantage in some of the more intense moments, but in some of the more quiet moments and some of the more should have been thought-provoking moments, it felt like I didn't really have a chance to let that emotion sit, because then we're jumping to the next scene very, very quickly. So I think that's part of the problem with the idea of a slow burn, is if you start the first few episodes where it's kind of building up the stories, but you're not really progressing anything, then you have to start progressing stuff in one episode. It can sometimes feel like this, where several things are happening all at once, and it's kind of hard to grasp onto any one story, because just as soon as you start to think about the one story, all of a sudden we're at the next scene, and you can't be thinking about what that means anymore. You have to be focused on what's happening now. So it's really the only criticism I have for this episode. A lot of the stuff in this was really well done. I do think it is becoming a bit of a cliche on the show that you tend to have characters acting stupid or characters being mean or something along those lines, and then they realize the error of their ways either by the end of the episode or by the end of the next episode. And you had a few instances of that in this one. You have Jordan with his granddad, you have Sarah with her mom, you have Clark with how he's handling Lois, even when between Clark and Lois and John Henry. You just have several moments of there's a blow up, there's conflict, but then it gets resolved because the characters wise up, and there's a good maturity about the show, at least. So first of all, we'll start with the Cushing story, because I do like how they ended up handling this one. I'm glad they had Sarah apologize, or she didn't really ever say sorry, but she did acknowledge that she was wrong in what she said. I do still think there needs to be a little bit more blame placed on her for what happened. Again, I'm not saying that Lana didn't overreact, and I'm not saying it's okay to slap your kids, but looking at that situation, it was already very highly charged, emotional. Her mom had just nearly died. She just got attacked. At least I think that's the order of events here. But she was just very high emotion. Sarah saying that, it brought that out of her. And she apologized for it, like she should. She acknowledged she wouldn't do it again. And I will say I'm at least glad, too, that Kyle seemed to, once he heard her side of it, did sort of at least wise up and go, okay, so she didn't just haul off and slap Sarah for no reason. If she had done that, he would have been a lot more pissed. But I think at that point, he was a little bit more understanding, and I think that's where Sarah should be a bit more understanding as well by the end of this. And I get they're coming at it from she's young, so maybe she just doesn't quite understand. But I do feel like most people watching this, they're not going to agree with what Lana did, but they will sympathize with it. They will understand why she did what she did, because Sarah was the one that provoked it out of her. She should be better than that, but she's also dealing with a lot of emotions right now because there's a lot going on as mayor of the city for her. But looking at the stuff with John Henry, I think it's something that was also very well handled. Whenever this whole idea of him having to go and talk to Darlene was brought up, I was really worried because there's a lot of different ways this could go. But really, the whole scene, very mature. From him instantly stepping in, I'm not your brother, I'm him from another world, very quickly just puts it out there. She doesn't act all, what? That doesn't make any sense. How can you be from another world? That's not possible. Because the people of this world have seen a lot. She even talks about the square sun in that world. So I'm glad they didn't have her act like he was an idiot for suggesting that he's her brother from another world. And even by the end of it, they have this nice little moment, but you could see what it means to her. She's reminded of the brother she lost on this world. And even though, yes, this is her brother, it's not her brother. And that emotion is overwhelming for her, and I think it's very well done. So I really hope this is not the end of their story, because I think there's something there. When you think about this, is almost a second chance for both of them to get to see their sibling again, even if it's not the sibling they had before. There still is a connection. There still are similar people. So I think there could be something where it's almost viewed as a second chance, but we'll see what they decide to do with it. But then you got all the different stories going on with the Kent family. You've got Clark dealing with trying to take care of Lois, trying to make sure she doesn't get stressed out, but he's also trying to deal with John Henry, finding out that they've been looking into Bruno Mannheim. With Lois, obviously, you've got the cancer stuff, but then she's still trying to look into Bruno Mannheim, but now she's pissed because Clark's trying not to put her through too much, and you can sense that she feels not betrayed, but she doesn't want to be treated with kid gloves, and that's what Clark is doing to her right now, and you can see how much it hurts her that he's doing that. But then on top of that, you've also got Jordan dealing with his granddad trying to get him to cut his hair because the one picture of him being a superhero with his hair was taken. And then Jordan goes off on him. You got Jonathan confronting Candace's dad about stealing his truck, and then Candace's dad punches him. And then you got Lois going up and threatening him, and then him threatening her. And then Clark comes in and threatens him, and now Candace is staying at their house. There's so much going on here. It's a wonder that they got it all done in one episode. Again, this is why a lot of stuff did feel rushed, because there's so much going on. I think some of these stories could have been dealt with maybe a bit sooner or even a bit later. I don't think the stuff with Emmett needed to happen now, to be perfectly honest. I think that's something maybe you could have saved a little bit later, although maybe there's a lot of stuff coming down the road that they knew they had to get some of these stories resolved, and so that's one they were like, let's just go ahead and get it done in this episode. And granted, this could not be the last we see of Emmett. He could be going to get reinforcements to go after Clark and his family. So while it seems like his story is done, it might not be. So there's still a lot there that could still be explored, and it is a lot. It is a lot to get through. I kind of hope they'll start streamlining some of these stories soon, because I don't want to have this feeling in every episode. Because there's so much good stuff in this, I don't want to feel rushed. Like when Sam is giving Jordan his outfit that he's going to fight in with the goggles, it should be a really good emotional scene, but it kind of just feels like suddenly he's decided, okay, you know what, you don't have to cut your hair. Even Jordan's turn at the end to apologizing to him and admitting what he said was wrong, there wasn't really a moment where we saw him change his mind or we saw him reflect on his actions. It's just, he said all of that stuff earlier in the episode, and then as they're sitting at the table at breakfast, Lois tells him that he has to go apologize to him and go get his hair cut. And he's just like, yeah, I know, I did wrong. Like, when did this change? When did he change his mind? So I do feel like some of these scenes, some of these changes in these characters were sort of jumped over. So I'm really hoping the next episode can slow down a little bit. But all in all, this episode was really good. There's nothing else that I could think of that stands out to me. So we're going to go ahead and move on to episode 5. I'll see you guys there in a sec. And now episode 5, Head On. Apologies for how dark it's going to get. Probably going to be dark in the intro as well because it's getting night, and unfortunately I still don't have a good setup for this. So anyways, this episode was a little bit more annoying to me, only because there were several more of the stories that felt not childish. The high school stuff definitely felt childish, but they were not quite as interesting. They were not quite as mature. The one story that stood out as being really, really good and very well handled is obviously the stuff with Clark and Lois, because of course it is. I mean, they are addressing this topic of cancer so well. And on top of that, doing it from the point of view of Clark. Yes, he's been here long enough to know what it's like to be human. And I don't know if they're going to talk about this or not, but I feel like for him, a lot of this process of dying and the body sort of shutting down because of this cancer, it's going to be something that to him is going to seem so foreign. Because I'm assuming he doesn't even get sick because of his Kryptonian DNA. So to have him experience firsthand what this is about with Lois as well, somebody who he loves, I feel like it's a very, very interesting story that they're handling very well so far. The conversation he has with the two women that are there being treated, very down to earth, very real, discussing topics that I feel like probably don't get mentioned very often when people just talk casually about cancer. This idea of just wanting to give up and needing strength to power through that feeling. It's very depressing to think about, but that's part of it. It's part of this whole process, and it's going to be very interesting to see Clark having to go through all of that. And even Lois's side of things, obviously she's there for the treatment, but she's having to look at the fact that Bruno Mannheim is doing stuff for the community. Even though he has his dastardly deeds, he has stuff that he's trying to do to accomplish for himself, there are things that he's doing that are helping people. And of course, for her, she's still very much wanting to take him down because she sees the bad he's doing. But I feel like they've set up a very interesting dichotomy to show some of the good that he's doing to get people to rally behind him. I do wonder if at some point that will be part of the story, where she is going so hard after him that she starts to lose people's trust because they're just seeing him for the good he's providing to the community. and they don't want to believe that a man who has helped them so much could possibly be doing anything evil. And so it's going to be even more difficult for her to prove the truth of who he is. So I think it really does set up for a very interesting story there, and it's something that I'm kind of excited to see how they're going to explore it, and I guess how Lois is going to tackle this problem. But basically everything else was just really dumb. Most of it centered around the dance. A couple of stories were people at the dance dealing with their own thing, like you got Kyle and Chrissy, you've got Lana dealing with the former mayor's son. The Kyle and Chrissy stuff, I mean, I've already talked a little bit about the Cushing side of things and how it feels like a soap opera. This just feels like a continuation of that. Not really that interested in it. The stuff with Lana and the former mayor, I'm glad it came to the resolution it did, where she realized that even though he was a bad man and he did some bad things, he did do some good too. And trashing him, especially after he's died, is not really going to make her look good in the eyes of the townspeople. And it's better to remember him for the good he did and how he helped people, especially for the sake of his son, who's really hurting after losing his father. But that was her whole story in this one, and it's just not really that interesting. Whether or not she's going to decide to publish this article or have Christy publish the article exposing all these secrets of a dead man, I feel like there's only one way that can go, unless you want your whole audience to hate her as a character, because who does that? Yeah, all the stuff with the kids is just really dumb. First of all, for Sarah, she's finally starting to reconnect with her mom a little bit. I will say, it feels like she's probably changed the most out of all the characters. And that's including one character who has a completely different actor playing him now. She just seems like such a different character. And first of all, the fact that she and Jordan are no longer together, they're not even hanging out. They're at this dance, they don't even talk to each other. Now all of a sudden it feels like maybe she's going to start hooking up with this junior out of nowhere. Were people disliking Jordan and Sarah together? Because I thought last season they came to a nice little resolution together. And the fact that they just split them up so quickly, and now they don't even talk to each other anymore. It's like they don't even remember that they were dating. It just feels very odd. Then you got Jonathan all of a sudden wants to be a firefighter, and so he's going to be working with them on the weekends, but now Candace is moving 4 hours away, and so now he has to decide between her doing that. What? Who cares? It's a high school romance. Most of them don't last past the first year out of high school anyway. And then Nat gets tracked down by this one guy, Mateo. I'm assuming he's going to be connected to Bruno Mannheim somehow, because it just seems like an obvious twist that most shows would do. Actually, if he is just some random guy from Metropolis that did see her at this one party and did really like her, and he tracked her down because he wants to date her, that would probably be a more surprising twist than if he was connected to Bruno Mannheim. But I'm assuming, because it seems like Mannheim just has people everywhere, this feels like he probably has somebody who has a kid, and that kid is Mateo. Then you got Sam involved in this story as well, trying to be the tough grandfather who's, I don't know if I like this kid. And then at the end of it, Jordan's getting him to sign up for a senior's dating app. It's just stupid. And I hate saying that, because I do really like this show and I like these characters. And most of the time I'm willing to put up with some of the lesser stories, because these characters are good enough to carry it through. But between the changes that they've made to Sarah, where she doesn't feel like the same character and she's kind of annoying me now, and then you just have so many side stories in one episode that really don't amount to anything and are mostly based on relationship stuff. I feel like this is the first episode that I've seen in this show that's felt like a CW episode. Most of them have felt so much better than most of what I saw in the CW. This felt like the writers of The Flash or Arrow or Supergirl came over for an episode. We're like, hey, can we write something? And then they wrote all this schlock, and they're like, well, we paid them, so I guess we got to use it for something. So yeah, we'll just put it all in one episode, get it out of the way, and then we'll hopefully move on to better stuff. Fingers crossed. Outside of that, the fight with the one guy that could disappear was pretty fun. And then finding out that apparently they found Bizarro Superman's body, might try to revive him, that could be pretty interesting. So there are still moments of intrigue, and there are good moments in this episode. I just think this is probably, of all of the episodes, this had the most frustration in it for me. So it's honestly just one of those things where the standards of the show are so high that this is the first one where I went, meh, it was okay. Some good moments in it. And that is pretty bad for this show, because this show is just normally so good. So I hope it's just a fluke, but we'll move on to the next episode. I'll see you guys there in a sec. And now episode 6 of Sound Mind. I freaking called it, but I can't prove it because I'm talking about this episode after watching the end, and I'm just sitting there thinking throughout most of the episode, please don't reveal that it's the one lady that Lois is talking to, Pia, because I knew it. As they were having that conversation at the table, I'm like, she's the one. Because you could tell that the one character was a woman kind of by the voice. The more you listen to it, there's definitely a feminine sounding voice at the base of it, even though it was very distorted. But as she's talking to Lois about everything she's been through with her treatment, talking about her husband and how, she's just being patient and waiting for him, it just all sort of clicked. Because there wasn't really anything in the last episode that clued me in. She just seemed like one of the side characters that was at this hospital. But then whenever she took Lois out for lunch, that's when things kind of clicked together. I'm thinking she's going to be more important than just some random side character who's also dealing with cancer. And so when she did start talking about her husband and how he's trying to help her and all this, that's why Bruno Mannheim is so focused on these experiments, on these cancer treatments. He's trying to save his wife. And of the superpowered beings that we've seen so far, only one of them might have been a woman. And so that's when it all just sort of clicked together. But as the episode went on, I'm just thinking, please don't show it's her. I want to sound smart. I want to get to the review and be like, I know who it is. But then at the end of the episode, they just reveal it anyway that it's her. And I'm thinking, well, I mean, I could say that I figured it out at the scene with Lois, but can't prove it. Well, to be fair, I guess I couldn't prove that I didn't know beforehand, even if they didn't show who it was at the end of this episode. But still, it was just kind of disappointing. But that story, fairly interesting, and I'm kind of interested to learn more about it. I hope we get a few more scenes with the two of them in the coming episodes. Why he honed in on Superman's blood as a possible treatment, how he got access to it. There's still some mystery here as far as the how, but at least we do now have the why, and I think that's going to be important going forward. Some of the stories on the outside, more interesting in this episode than the last one. First of all, the stuff with Kyle and Lana, still kind of soap opera-ish. She finds out that he and Chrissy are seeing each other in this episode. But really, the focal point I felt should have been on the girls. Because this is what I talked about before. The idea of watching this family go through the divorce, it's something that is very human in the midst of all of this superhuman stuff. And how does it affect the kids? We're seeing a bit in this episode with Sophie, what she's dealing with her parents being split up, and how she just wants somebody to spend time with, but both of them are busy doing their own thing, and Sarah's acting like a little brat now, so she doesn't even have her sister to hang out with anymore. So there are elements and relationships that you can explore in the idea of a divorce. And honestly, you could explore the idea that they are going to start seeing other people. We've already seen John Henry and Lana talking. Obviously, Kyle and Chrissy are hooking up now, but this is something that I'd expect to see maybe later on this season, maybe with a few episodes left. There's been some looks between Kyle and Chrissy, but there's not really been anything happening. And then a few episodes left, that's when something finally happens. And then they have to discuss what all that means. But the problem was this happened so quickly. It was like, what, episode 1? That Kyle and Chrissy were interested in each other, and then they hooked up the one time, and now they're finally just admitting that they're dating. It feels like this has been the focal point for Kyle for most of this season. For Jonathan, we see him starting his firefighter stuff, which he's just basically being hazed at this point, being forced to clean trucks and all that, which is weird because in the last episode, it felt like Kyle actually did respect him and actually did want to see him become a firefighter. And now in this episode, it feels like it was all just a joke. Like, yeah, come on, be a firefighter. Just kidding, clean my shit. And also the fact that he's going and tutoring Sarah. What happened here? Did the writers just really not like Jordan and Sarah together? Because I will say, I know I've said that she's changed a lot to where she feels like a different character. Admittedly, she is young. She's, I think, 16. And she's going through a divorce. I could see that causing a lot of change in her personality and all of that, but at the same time, it does make her less likable to do this. And the writing team chose to have her change this much. So I'm not really on board with this, and with Jonathan now tutoring her, I'm worried this is going to turn into some stupid rift between the brothers now, where maybe she starts to catch feelings for Jonathan, and then Jordan's going to get jealous and blah, 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 and they already threw in a little line where Jonathan's talking about, oh, well, Sarah liked my shirt. Wait, you talked to Sarah? I just don't want that to become a bickering point in the future because it's just so lazy to have two brothers be interested in the same girl. But on the bright side, with Jordan, we do have an interesting story where Clark is dealing with the fact that Jordan wants to be a hero, and he's not really sure if he wants him to get to that point. And he is dealing with two very different sides of things where Jordan wants to put himself in harm's way and could get hurt in the process, whereas Lois is just dealing with something that he can't do anything to help her with. And so it's almost like he's overcompensating with Jordan to the point where he won't let him do anything to put himself in danger because he can't do anything about Lois being in just constant danger of this thing inside of her that's killing her. So it's once again very, very maturely handled and something that I don't feel like needs to be said. It's something that can really be understood just by looking at it. I think that's about everything concerned with the main stories in this one. couple of things on the outside that I thought were pretty interesting, but didn't get a whole lot of focus. First of all, the fact that Mannheim was just willing to let, I don't remember the name of the guy now, DeStefano, something like that. He was just willing to let him die. It does show the more ruthless side of him, where this guy served his purpose. He got him the information, got him Bizarro Superman. Who cares if he dies now? But I think it also does do a good job of showing this is what happens to these people. They're still going to die. Superman's blood gives them a little bit of a boost. It gives them these powers, but it doesn't fix the problem. And in the end, they will still die. So his wife is still going to die. And the other thing, too, is showing some of her powers. I think we saw a little bit in the one episode where she made him hear all of these different things, so he flew up and looked and couldn't find anything. Well, in this one, I don't know how she gets access to some of these noises. Maybe she has to hear them to be able to replicate them, but replicating Lois's voice, making it sound like she's in danger, it's something she can use in the future. It's something that clearly confuses Clark because he doesn't know what he's hearing and whether it's real or not. And then on top of that, I don't even know what to call it. It almost looks like a siren cry. It's a very similar effect to the siren cries that they had on Arrow, but that is also very clearly effective at hurting Superman. So I don't know if she has super strength or anything like that, but at the very least she does have powers that are capable of giving him a real problem. So it'll be interesting to see them go head to head again in the future and how he's going to find a way around that and find a way to beat her. But all in all, we're about halfway through, and I have to say I'm very excited to see more. I think Mannheim has shown that even though he doesn't have superpowers and he can't go one-to-one in a fist fight with Superman, he does have enough resources, he does have enough control, and he does have enough of a public image where Superman can't just stop him with physical force. He's going to have to find a way to outthink him. And I think that's where having this show be Superman and Lois, that's the part of the superheroing that Lois is able to handle. She's able to take on that public image to the point where Superman is able to do something about it with his fists. So I'm definitely excited to see what happens next. But until then, let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. What were your thoughts on these 3 episodes? Let me know. We can talk about, discuss all that good stuff. Leave a like and subscribe for future Superman and Lois reviews. Also check out the channel. We have a lot of other reviews on here, so check those out if you have time. But until next time, I hope you guys have a great day, and I'll talk to y'all later. Peace out.